Welcome to the Mariah Jean Fit YouTube channel. I'm Coach Mariah. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos as much as possible so we can reach a broader audience. We appreciate your support and enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to another podcast and vlog with Coach Mariah, Mariah Jean Fit and the Fit Minds podcast on Spotify and vlog on YouTube. So today we're going to talk about the myth of toning, specifically the female body. It seems that this is a terminology that is used quite prolifically and widely in the fitness industry. Have you ever noticed that we don't seem to hear any sort of terminology like toning or sculpting for men's fitness? Sometimes you'll hear things like sculpting abs in men's magazines and the like, but why do we not hear the word toning or toned or getting toned or tone up, those types of terminologies and phrases in men's fitness and health? And the reason why is because this is a term that was coined specifically to appeal to a female audience, basically. In the earlier days of when we started looking at resistance training, and we mean gym training, getting to the gym, getting squats in, even your upper body training, etc., for the purpose of seeing definition in muscle groups, it was seen that growing muscle was not something that women typically identified with. In that, the days of Arnie Schwarzenegger, for example, when he was building in the gym and growing in the gym for bodybuilding competitions, and that was kind of where the era kind of almost blew up of gym training and really started quite strongly. Mind you, we've been doing this for literally hundreds of years. Like, you look at the Roman Empire, the era of when people were wrestling, for example, and pushing boulders up hills. That's all resistance training of some sort and aspect and growing muscle. But women started to have this desire to see more definition in their muscles. These lines that you see, the definition that you can see in my arms, and even in things like abdominal definition and your back, and just that little bit more of a sharpness to the female physique, less of a softness, so to speak. Now, the fascination for that, really slowly kind of infiltrated our lives. And there was a time, really even within this, the last 100 years, where it wasn't fashionable to be defined and to be slim and sculpted. So there was a time where it came about where it was sellable, right? And this is what I'm trying to get at in this podcast, is that people, and specifically companies, found a way to sell this idea to women. And there are actually videos online of the early days of trying to market products towards women, because women are fantastic consumers. And there was this amazing, I still remember it, there's a video of women with these like steam rollers of some sort. They were kind of standing next to these machines. I could possibly pop up a little preview of it up here on the screen for you. And it was crazy, like these big steam rolling machines to define and sculpt the female body and get rid of cellulite and the like. And this is where it all kind of started, really, is that it was a product to sell, and it still is. People are still trying to sell the product to you, which gives you this toned look. And if you really think about what toned is, and it seems to be this terminology thrown around by women, I hate to break it to you, but it's actually exactly the same process as building muscle and losing body fat. They're two separate processes that can occur, yes, simultaneously. One occurs possibly better than the other in some circumstances, but women have kind of smushed it together and they've got this idea that toning is a thing. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to achieve a more defined look, it's absolutely possible. It's not me saying it's not possible to look more defined, but we must start to change the language around what that looks like so that we can actually accept the processes we need to take to achieve that desired outcome. And also not putting this insurmountable pressure on ourselves to have specific areas to be more defined than others. And this all depends on things like your genetics, your genetic makeup, and the like, where you naturally store body fat. And we have to pay attention to the fact that your weight and being more defined do not necessarily need to correlate. It's the interesting thing is that you do not need or necessarily need to chase reducing your weight dramatically in order to achieve a defined look. I'll use a fantastic example. Myself, I still have the same amount of definition that I had probably about 10 years ago. I currently weigh about 69 kilos, and 10 years ago I weighed around 45 kilos. Now you can see that those are two very drastically different weights, but due to the idea that I accepted that perhaps maybe my weight wasn't a direct reflection upon the way that my body could appear, perhaps, that I started to let go of this idea that my weight was the focal point, and that perhaps if I wanted to be more defined and have more definition and more sharpness and a slightly slimmer waist, etc., that it wasn't a case of targeting that area by rolling it with a cream or trying to eat as little as possible and lose as much weight as possible, but perhaps maybe, just maybe, that I could be okay with the idea of gaining, I know, crazy, right? Gaining muscle. And it seems to be such a negative terminology. Whenever I speak to women, especially inquiries, new inquiries, people who maybe haven't trained as much or haven't gone to the gym as much, done as much resistance training previously, and they always come in with the same thing, the same goals. And honestly, I don't blame them because it has been really heavily marketed to us. But it's, what would you like to achieve from coaching or from your fitness journey? I just want to tone up. I just want to get tone up, and I want to lose weight. Now, whenever I hear those two very common phrases thrown at me, in my mind, I'm like, this person has not successfully done this before or not for a prolonged period of time. And this person does not understand the processes required to achieve the result they actually want. And the result they actually want is, I want to lose body fat and I want to gain some muscle, right? And so this can often look, if we look at that, right? If we look at that from a mathematical perspective, I know some people don't like maths, but really it's quite simple. It's plus and minus. If we want to gain muscle and lose body fat, we're going to have to be okay with this idea that your weight cannot forever be going down, right? You might go down, you might go up and then down, right? But the correlation between the two is that if you need to gain muscle in order to see more definition in certain areas, maybe build some more of your glutes, turn to the right, you can see I've got a decent set of glutes there. If we're wanting to grow certain parts of our body, if we're wanting to have more shape, if we're wanting to be more defined and not just have straight up and down legs and actually have some muscle mass beneath our skin and create that shape, we cannot just create shape from nothing. We have to have clay to work with, right? And the clay has to weigh something. So if you can imagine that muscle is like clay, right? In that we can grow it, we can add more clay on, in certain areas. Sure, we can grow certain areas to expand the muscle out, right? That's very possible with adequate nutrition and resistance training, mostly weights training. Okay, you're not going to see it with cardio, you're not going to see it with excessive running, etc. We can grow certain parts of muscle, but the problem is that right there, women stop in their tracks and they get scared. I don't want to get too big. They have this weird picture in their mind of like they're just going to turn into the Hulk tomorrow, or that they're going to turn into Arnie. That if they're in the gym with the boys and they're growing muscle, that they're going to end up like that guy. Or they're going to end up like the female they've seen in the gym that, maybe loves bodybuilding and has gotten considerably bigger from a muscle mass perspective. That one or two, there's always one or two in the gym. But you don't know how she got there. And there's probably a very good reason as to why she's there, why she's got that much muscle mass. But it's actually not that easy. I often say this to clients who say, I don't want to get too big. I don't even need to be as big as you, Mariah. And I'm not even big. Like I'm a size 8. It's deceiving. I don't want to be quite that big. And the interesting thing is it's not actually that big at all. And I often reply with, just try. Try to get as big as me. Try and grow as much muscle as me. You will not be able to. It's just one of those things. I've been training for 10 years. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to very purposefully get to a point where you've grown a considerable amount of muscle mass. And we're looking at the recomposition. It's called recomposition of the body. It's whereby you gain muscle, but you're also looking at losing body fat. Now, as I said, these two processes can be done very well in two very different scenarios, in that the loss of body fat requires you to eat in a calorie deficit. So that's basically peeling back the body fat that's underneath the skin. We have a layer of body fat. We actually have a couple of layers of body fat underneath the skin. And to peel that back, you cannot apply anything to the surface of your skin for that to occur. You cannot target the area. You can't say, I really want to lose it just off my arms, but not my butt. You don't get to decide where the body fat is taken from when your body accesses that as a fuel source. But in order for the body to access the body fat as a fuel source, you must eat in a calorie deficit. You must hear this all the time. Eat in a calorie deficit so that you can burn body fat. Now, to figure out what your calorie deficit is, it means you have to either track your food or have a tailored meal plan done for you. And we all know you can't live off a tailored meal plan forever. So learning how to track your food is one of the best skills that you can have under your belt, specifically if you're needing to lose quite a bit of body fat, or you want to. And if you want to lose that body fat, you've got to make sure you're in this calorie deficit. Basically means that you are literally using more energy daily, right? With breathing, talking, walking, exercising, your normal metabolic rate, just your standard heart rate for how tall you are and your genetics. And you need to actually burn more of that, and quite a bit more, than what you are consuming from a food nutrition perspective. And so if you're wanting to get more definition, I won't even use the word toned. If you're wanting to get more definition and see more definition and lose the body fat so you can see the muscle that's underneath, if there is some there, right, then we actually have to consciously eat in a calorie deficit. Now, that doesn't mean eat like a mouse. It doesn't mean you wake up in the morning and you have a cup of air for breakfast and then lunch is a salad with, a protein sauce and that's it, and some lettuce leaves. And then dinner is, another lean protein sauce and a bite of broccoli or something like that. You don't have to eat like a mouse. And in fact, it's actually awful for you to do that long term. If you look at underfeeding the body for prolonged periods of time, the effects of that on your body can actually cause a significant amount of stress. And also there's something called metabolic adaptation. I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but metabolic adaptation is basically a fancy terminology for, when people say, I've been eating 1,200 calories for ages and nothing's happening. They're either not following the 1,200 calories properly, they're not tracking it, they're not tracking things like sauces and crumbs and all the extra alcohol and drinks that they're having and bites of cookies and snacks that the kids are having during the day as well. Or they've been eating in a calorie deficit for, too deeply for far too long, right? And that has actually resulted in metabolic adaptation. Now, this usually occurs around 6 to 8 weeks of dieting at its highest peak, and it just gets worse, basically. And that's where you see a standstill with fat loss. And you will see a standstill with performance as well. So basically we know getting definition in the areas you want to get them in doesn't rely on you eating as little as possible. And I know it's very difficult to figure out, hold on, okay, then how much is too little? How much is, how do I know whether I'm eating too little? Do I need to eat more food than I'm currently eating? Generally, you'll need the advice of a professional to figure that out. And that's why these schemes online of, follow this plan to tone up, this is a toning, training program, etc., are incredibly toxic for the female population, because it's basically like throwing a blanket over everybody and saying, here is a one size fits all for everyone. And it can get really confusing and really frustrating for some women, specifically if they've got completely different, factors, lifestyle factors, etc., or they may have different genetics, they may not be moving as much during the day, they might be sitting down a little bit more, and they're taking on these toning programs which are given to literally hundreds of thousands of millions of people, and they're getting frustrated because number one, they're not seeing results. Number two, they're getting very weight fixated and they're saying my weight isn't changing. And number three, they end up pretty much falling straight off the bandwagon again because they don't learn anything, and they're also not necessarily eating some of the foods that they enjoy. They're not incorporating those foods. These are very bland, boring diets, or specifically, they can't just eat the same meals, for the rest of their life. They need variety. So that's the calorie deficit that's required to lose body fat is a very simple explanation, but basically it's just you need to eat actually slightly less than the energy that you're burning for the day, total energy, and that's because that leftover energy that you need, right, that chunk of energy that you're going to expend is going to be something that your body then accesses body fat stores for, right? So it's, okay, I've run out of food, I can't freaking use anything else to use fuel, what can I use instead? And it generally will be body fat, unless in some cases, if you're doing high heart rate training, a ton of cardio, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, if you're doing a ton of cardio, high heart rate training, and you don't have enough carbohydrates, if you haven't eaten enough carbs for the day, that's when you can see muscle wastage. So it seems pretty counterproductive for women to be running around saying, I want to get toned, I want to tone up, do I need to do a ton of cardio, going and doing a ton of cardio, eating very little food, and then all of a sudden we've got metabolic adaptation, they're literally muscle wasting, their body is eating half the muscle that they've even tried to grow to show anyway. And by the end of it, they're not happy with their results. They're looking at themselves going, I can't see any lines, I can't see any definition, I can't see any firmness. Where's this firmness that I wanted? I feel like maybe I've lost weight, but I still can't see any definition. And it's because we don't look at educating women to preserve the muscle mass that they have and to look at building a little bit more. Don't be afraid of building a little bit more muscle than you currently have. You are not going to end up like the Hulk. You are not going to end up like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'll tell you why. You don't have enough testosterone. Testosterone is found in very small amounts for women. We do have small amounts of testosterone in our system. And men, it's found in much larger amounts. Like, I'm talking like exponentially larger than what we've got. This is kind of the fundamental difference between men and women from a hormonal perspective, is this large amount of testosterone present for men, and we have far more high levels of things like estrogen and progesterone, right? So these are the things that make us a male and a female. So obviously, along with a few other things, we're talking about some anatomy here, but really testosterone is a fantastic hormone for muscle growth. It's fantastic for muscle preservation as well. So women, it sometimes feels like we're training really hard, we're lifting really heavy weights, and then sometimes we go, oh, hold on, we actually identify with this idea that this is a lot harder than I thought it was. And it actually takes a lot more to grow muscle than I thought it did. And I don't need to be afraid of maybe picking up the slightly heavier weight, because I'm not going to turn into a man. I'm not going to just suddenly pop up with these massive biceps tomorrow. Because you've never even given yourself the chance to do so. You've never even given yourself a chance to train that way. So I will often see, as I said with the toning, the whole I want to tone up and lose weight, is that women don't actually know what they want. They keep saying they know what they want. I want to tone and I want to lose weight. But they don't have the knowledge base behind them to understand that it's not toning, it's losing body fat, and it's gaining a small amount of muscle so that you can have something to show underneath the body fat, right? If we just focus on weight loss, we then have to get you to a point where basically, if you just want your weight to go down and you're so fixated on numbers, if we were to get you to that stage, I was there, 45 kilos about 10 years ago, and I had no butt. I had a pancake bum. Like, I had no butt, I had no legs, I had no shape. I was straight up and down, and I was flogging myself silly. I certainly wasn't eating enough, and I was doing crazy amounts of cardio. And every time I put on a dress, I was sad because I didn't have this nice shape. I didn't feel like I had, a little bit of, like curves in my hips and everything. I didn't have that because I was so fixated on weight. And this is where we see this massive rabbit hole of women getting stuck in this idea of that weight loss and toning are these major focus points and goals. So the other point that I'll touch on along with the whole toning phenomena is the idea that people are throwing, especially as I said, these big name companies and things like that, even small name companies that just decide they want to take advantage of, everyday people who don't know enough about this stuff. that they're throwing things like waist trainers and gels and you name it. Like there's all sorts of weird machines and gadgets out there that are, basically marketed to you to say this will reduce your cellulite and this will make you tone up. I really hate that phrase. This will make you more defined and tighter and smoother, and you'll see more definition and and the like. And cellulite is really just a collection of harder visceral fat masses under the skin. One of the best things to get rid of cellulite is eating in a calorie deficit. Your body will then be forced to consume its own body fat. In most circumstances that we're looking at, if we're doing resistance training and we're eating enough protein, we're having some carbs before training, etc., your body's going to try and access some body fat stores. Even if you just increase your walks every day, it's going to try and access those body fat stores if you're in a calorie deficit. If you're eating in a calorie deficit. And most often than not, most people aren't. Most people try and go on one of these journeys and they go, what's going on? Why am I not doing this right? Why am I not seeing definition? You're so focused on trying to get your weight down that you're not thinking about the fact that maybe if I just eat properly, maybe if I just pay attention to my nutrition a little bit more, that I will see those two things slowly start to change over time. The body fat starts reducing, the muscle mass increases a little bit, and you have basically what I said before, recomposition. Your composition of your body starts to change. So you could see my arm here, right? I could literally have an arm that is 80% body fat, but most of it could be body fat, right? Now, I don't, obviously. My arm has got muscle mass underneath there. That is how I have got that defined look. When you look at my skin there, you can see the line there, that definition, that firmness is because there's muscle underneath there. That's that firm hardness underneath the skin. That's what creates a defined look. You can't just lose the body fat. Imagine if you had an arm that was mostly body fat, not very much muscle, and if we lost all of that body fat off that arm, you'd have a bone. You'd have a bone left. That's what would be left. If we were just focused on loss, we'd have a bone left. We don't want bones for arms. Okay, last time I checked, we want to be able to pick up our own bloody groceries. So if we want definition in certain areas, every type of area, you're going to want to gain muscle. Now, one of the places that is exempt from this type of idea is your abdominals. And I'll explain why. You cannot just do crunches to get abs. That's not how it works. You don't do crunches and they just pop up out of nowhere. You've got to understand that there are small muscles, which are your abdominals. And over the top of those muscles is a layer of body fat. And specifically, as women, we're going to have a little bit more down the lower part where our uterus is. And this helps us stop us from getting sick and is partially a part of our reproductive health, right? So we actually need that little bit down the bottom there, yeah? Now, if you are so fascinated with seeing abdominal definition, the best thing you can do is eat in a calorie deficit, take your diet breaks when you need to with the professional that you're working with, and go back into that calorie deficit again after those diet breaks, and you will eventually start to see, and I'm talking, depends on literally how much body fat you've got to lose. You'll eventually start to see definition in your stomach, but you must be consistent. You cannot keep reaching for quick fixes. You cannot keep reaching for fat sculpting tools. You can't keep reaching for these crazy online schemes and things that you can drink and take and things that you think you can tangibly do to the muscle. You can't laser it off. You can't burn it off with a tool, right? And you certainly can't drink something that has some sort of magical effect on that area and all of a sudden you've got abs. That's just not how it works. If you speak to anybody who is a professional in this industry and who has ever had abdominal definition, I currently have a little bit myself. I'm pseudo lean, so I tend to not store very much body fat around there. I don't do it on purpose. It's just my genetics, and I've worked really hard over the years to maintain this composition of my body. But if you speak to a professional who has abdominals, they're going to tell you, I ate in a calorie deficit. I did resistance training. I did those two things, right? And I made sure that I was getting my daily steps in. I drank enough water. It's very simple. It's a really simple process, but somehow we seem to believe there is some sort of corner that we can cut, or that there's some sort of shortcut that we can take, or that we can, buy something online that's going to melt our fat off. I've seen all sorts of things. I've seen I saw something the other day. It was like this guy wrapped himself in something and it was vibrating on him, and it's like, oh, this helps burn body fat around your tummy. You cannot do that. You cannot wrap something around a limb or around a part of your body and then just take the body fat off there. I think the only thing that currently exists that says that you can do that is liposuction. And even in the case of liposuction, if you get rid of the body fat from that area, you actually literally surgically remove the body fat from that area, right? You go in, you take it out with, you get under the knife. If you go back to eating the way that you ate before, right, in a calorie surplus, right, or maybe probably too many calories, and this is just food. If you're eating a shit ton of concentrated calories like soft drinks, like, alcoholic beverages, for example, are full of calories. And if you're eating these really concentrated, mostly it's actually honestly liquid calories that are the worst for this. And things like lots of oils, saturated fats, deep fried things. If you're constantly eating takeaway all the time, there's so many hidden calories in foods you don't realize that you're consuming on a daily basis. If you order a smoothie, takeaway smoothie, you've got no idea what's going in it. You never know how many calories are in that. So it's all about these calories in, calories out. But if you get the liposuction done, yes, sweet, I got the body fat off, I sucked it all off me. You go straight back to that lifestyle, all that body fat goes right back on, straight back on again. It'll take time, but because you've not made that lifestyle change, because you've not actually paid attention to the calories in versus calories out, you're not going to get the result that you want long term, you're not going to sustain it. There is no coincidence why health professionals like myself and other health professionals who are successful in the industry, and perhaps maybe not, maybe some people maintain a different physique and they just teach others how to do so as well, and how to get into even just a healthy range of body fat percentage. For women, this is one of the biggest struggles, is that we don't even need you to be below 30% body fat. We just need you to be in a range that isn't at risk to things like your heart, etc. So health professionals like myself who've maintained a relatively healthy body composition, I still get my cycle and things like that now, and I've got a healthy amount of little bit of body fat on my lower tummy and obviously on my legs, and I allow that because it's completely normal and okay for women, and this is what we need to normalize. But if you see a health professional who's maintained their composition over the last maybe 5 to 8, 10 years, within reason, they probably know what they're talking about. Okay? Especially if they're teaching this kind of thing, especially if they're not taking advice from someone else, and this is something that they execute, they practice and preach themselves. Never take advice from the damn internet. Never take advice from the damn internet. Honestly, you can Google anything you like tomorrow and it will tell you that you're dying, right? Or it will tell you that, maybe you have premonitions and you're some sort of magician. It is possible to find anything that you want on the internet, and that's what I'm going to highlight. Anything you want on the internet. You can find the cure-all for your body fat woes, your toning and sculpting, and people will take your money for it. I'm telling you this for free. This podcast is free, right? And I don't even care. I don't want you as a client. I don't need you as a client. I've said this in many podcasts. I don't need clients. I'm booked. I can take people on for a few other, things that we've got going on. We've got the Fierce Journey at the moment. It's happening. We're right in the middle of that. And the next one, I will take obviously people for that too. But this podcast is designed to literally smack the silly out of the people who are getting stuck in these patterns, getting sold to by the internet. The internet, which honestly, these, companies that are trying to make money from you, know that consumers like products that promise them the world. And I can say to you with conviction, there is nothing that you can buy on the internet in the way of a product, whether it be a powder, whether it be a belt, whether it be a weird sculpty tool thing. I honestly don't even know what they look like, but Lord, they're concerning. Whether it be a cream, whether it be, a substance that you drink, for example, etc., etc. Anything tangible that you can hold in your little hands. There is nothing on the internet that is going to do the job of creating definition and losing body fat, right? Nothing. I'm not even gonna have this argument with anybody. What about this, Mariah? Does this give me any advantage? No. Stop looking for it, Stop looking for it. Stop asking for what's going to tone you up that you can buy. And start asking for what can you do that's going to help you lose body fat and get a little bit more muscle. Don't be afraid of gaining a little bit of muscle as a female, okay? Because gaining muscle does not mean gaining body fat. It doesn't mean getting bigger. It doesn't mean any of the above. These amazing shapes that you see that people are building and creating, where they do have definition in there, maybe they're a little bit in their legs or wherever, it's got to be made of something. It's made of muscle. Where do you think that comes from? We don't just create and draw the shape on our leg, right? It's solid. And there's a reason why, for myself as a size 8, okay, 69 kilos looks very different on me because I'm literally made of a big chunk of muscle. I am incredibly dense in muscle. And muscle, as you've heard before, weighs more than body fat for the surface area that it takes up, right? So body fat is like a fluffy cushion, right? It's big and fluffy. And then you've got, on the other side, the equivalent muscle would be like this lead weight, right? And obviously we know which one is going to feel heavier, right? But they don't really take up, if they take up the same amount of space, right? So if you think about that, if it weighs exactly the same, if the muscle mass weighs a bit more, like I'm talking, it's heavy, right? It's a lead weight, and the fluffy pillow weighs less but takes up the same amount of room, you can imagine that your weight, how much you physically weigh, actually really at a certain point, and I do mean this, doesn't mean anything. This will connect back to the Weight Focus podcast. If you haven't heard that, please take a listen. It explains a lot about this. So toning is a myth. Toning is not a thing. Stop using the word toning because you're only doing yourself a disservice. Come to a professional and say, hey, I'm looking at losing some body fat and getting some more definition. I would really like to grow some muscle. I'd really like to put on some muscle. Change the language that you're using. And the reason why you're so hesitant to change this language is because you are stuck in a loop with the rest of society. You're stuck in a loop with marketing that's been thrown at you. And the interesting thing is, if you don't stop using this language, the marketing companies are going to keep throwing it at you, right? Because if you keep saying, I want to get toned, I want to tone up, I want to do the magical thing to make myself toned, the company's going to say, well, it's what they want. They want to get toned. If we use those words, we're going to get more sales. We're going to, oh my God, they love the words toned. Let's use that. We cannot group fat loss and muscle gain into one terminology called toned, because you sure as hell haven't heard blokes coming to people going, hey, g'day mate, just looking at getting more toned. I just want to get, I want to get rid of the beer gut and get more toned. It doesn't make any fucking sense, but it's the same process. They're wanting to lose body fat, they're wanting to gain a little bit of lean muscle mass, and the other advantage to gaining lean muscle mass, because you think, okay, well, what happens if he just wants to lose the body fat off his beer gut, right? The other advantage to gaining lean muscle mass is that it increases your body's fat burning capabilities. So people wonder how I can eat more food and eat more calories. Huzzah, it's because I have more muscle mass, right? I actually move heavier weights in the gym, therefore I'm burning more calories. It's a harder job. I've got a freaking Mack truck that I'm working with. This is not a Suzuki Swift. I have a Mack truck. I burn through a ton of fuel and it takes a lot to move it, right? And I've got a lot of towing capacity. I'm strong as shit. So removing that fear around muscle gain will be the reason, I suppose, the way that you can break out of this constant cycle of, I need to lose as much weight as possible to be successful in my journey. And I want to tone up, but I'm not sure how I need to do that. Now, obviously the body fat process is done best in a calorie deficit. Muscle gain can occur, when you're in a calorie deficit. It can, with adequate protein intake, with the right nutrient timing, if you're having some carbs before any sort of intensive weights training, sure. You can definitely gain small amounts of lean muscle mass when you're in a calorie deficit. So if you want to focus mostly on fat loss and you want a little bit of muscle definition, you're probably going to want to get into a calorie deficit, or figure out where your current calories are and maybe work with a professional on getting them to a point where they need to be. Maybe you need to eat more for a little bit, give your body a bit of a break and then go back into a deficit. But The other factor is that if you want to gain a significant amount of muscle mass, and I'm talking if you want a pickup truck butt, if you want just one of those big dump truck butts, right? You think, that's it. I'm sick of my flat bum. I'm sick of my pancake ass. I need a nice round booty. Number one, it's going to take you a really long time. And I'm talking like it's going to take you years, not just 8 weeks. It's going to take you a long time. And you're probably not going to like to hear that, but you will see progress over time. Number two, this will happen best growing a significant amount of muscle mass. And trust me, glutes take a lot of work. Growing a significant amount of muscle mass will mean that you're going to eat more food. Okay, you're going to need to eat more food. You're going to need to eat your protein intake. You're going to need to do resistance training. You're going to need to do much heavier weights than just body weight squats. You cannot get a bum. You can't grow a muscly bum, a nice firm bum, by doing squats with booty bands. It's not possible. It's just not possible. Now, you might see it on the internet. You might see these women with these like crazy, big glutes doing booty band squats and things like that. Remember what they're trying to sell you, okay? You might think they're selling you their bum, but they're trying to sell you a product. And they're trying to sell you something that you will probably easily buy. And if it's booty bands or if it's a really quick bodyweight program that you think will be super easy and simple, then of course they're going to do what it takes to sell that to you, right? And you're going to grab it because you're going to go, oh, it takes me 20 minutes, of course. Oh, I love that, right? I don't have to do any hard work. I don't have to do any heavy lifting. So it's a happy marriage in heaven, which is a complete lie between the two of you, right? And you're both sinking into that sinkhole. But if you talk to professionals like myself, any other sports nutritionist, actually reputable, trainers online that work one-on-one with clients, they're going to tell you the truth. They're always going to tell you the truth. So if you want to grow a decent booty, you're probably going to have to eat in a calorie surplus or a calorie maintenance level for quite some time to do that. And yes, you will see over time that your composition will and can change for lots of different reasons. But there's a bit of maths involved, as I mentioned. That's why talking to a professional about this type of thing is the best thing that you can do. That's the best thing you can do. Stop investing your money into stupid products. It doesn't even have to be with me and our team. Find yourself a coach that you work really well with, that's sports nutrition qualified, that knows what they're talking about. Do not go to your GP and ask them for a weight loss plan because they do not specialize in nutrition. That's what nutritionists and dietitians are for. And work long-term with a coach so that you don't keep falling back into this constant cycle of this doesn't work and this doesn't work and I tried this and this didn't work and this didn't work and my weight's still the same and I lost weight but I'm not happy with my results, etc., etc., etc. Don't think that you have to lose body fat then gain muscle. I hear this a lot. I just want to focus on losing weight, then I want to gain some muscle. Oh, no, honey. No, you don't have to do that. You can do both at the same time, sure. You can lose body fat and gain a little bit of muscle. But you don't have to look at focusing on one or the other. The same type of training that's required to lose body fat and gain muscle, they're the same type, resistance training. It's not like you have to do super light weights for higher reps to lose body fat and then heavy weights for lower reps to gain muscle. It's the same type of training that's required to do exactly both the same thing, basically. Because if you want to keep the muscle you've got, resistance training is awesome. If you want to grow some muscle, resistance training is awesome. If you want to lose some body fat, resistance training is awesome. And increasing the weights that you do with those resistance training sessions can only be a good thing for you over time, which is called progressive overload. It's called hypertrophy. It's called I'm going to grow a little bit more muscle and get a little bit more strong over time. It's only going to be good for body fat loss because you're going to increase the amount of energy that you're expending, the heavier that you lift. And also, as I mentioned before, your metabolic rate, how much body fat your body naturally burns without even having to try, okay, will be increased the more muscle mass you have. So the ultimate aim is for you to upgrade your Suzuki Swift, okay, to a Mack truck. You know what? Doesn't even have to be a Mack truck. Can just be like, a van if you really want to. If you want to upgrade to a van, but at least to something that has more capacity than where you are currently. Stop selling yourself short with bodyweight workouts. Stop selling yourself short with booty bands. Stop selling yourself short with the fat burners, the products, the shakes, the things that you think are going to fix the underlying issue and give you this result that you're looking for, because it's just not that simple. It's actually a much longer process than you thought it was. And that's why you've been experiencing these kind of like cyclic patterns of attempt and fail at very quick fixes online, very much quick fixes. Don't waste your money on the waist trainers. Don't waste your money on collagens and things like that, supplements that really don't have any sort of, well, actually they have no sort of evidence to prove that they have any fat burning capabilities or anything like that. And focus on food first. The only types of supplements, I've talked about this in a previous podcast, that I will support and will support as sports nutritionists will be things like protein powder as a supplementary to things like lean meat. If you don't like eating a lot of meat, fantastic. You can add a protein powder to oats and smoothies and things like that to get your protein up. That's what's required and actually assists with the muscle building process, okay? And then things like caffeine, great for performance, fantastic for endurance training and for longer gym sessions. It will help with your performance. And then things like creatine. Creatine is the only other one I would say that will be great for muscle building if you're trying to grow a lot of muscle. So more specifically for those kind of hard gainers and for women who are really struggling to grow muscle, I would suggest the supplementation of creatine. But it does take a lot to supplement creatine in that you've got to load that. So you've got to load it for a week at a certain amount, and then you've got to keep taking it every day for it to have full effect. So other than that, though, honestly, there are no other supplements that have significant evidence to show that there is any sort of advantage to being able to burn body fat and gain muscle. And even those supplements themselves really, as I said, work as supplementary, and they can give you an advantage, but they aren't the core and the center of what you're required to do to action the goals that you've got. Change the language, change it from toning up, sculpting, to gaining muscle, losing body fat. Be a little bit less weight focused. Have a look in the mirror, see what you're visibly seeing in the mirror every single day over time. Take pictures in the right lighting. Make sure that you pat yourself on the back when you see small changes and lines popping through. Know that it's probably going to take a lot longer than what you think it is. It's not a 3-day process. It's certainly not a week process. You will see differences over months, not weeks. And stop wasting your money online. I do not want to see another person purchase a fat burning supplement or a waist trainer or a sculpting tool or a supplement that you think you can consume that will speed up your metabolism or tone your body. Start to change the narrative. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate you listening to this podcast. A bit of a shorter one today, but looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Okay.